Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to call the regular monthly Park and Recreation Commission meeting to order for Wednesday, November 28th, 2012. And if you'd all rise for the pledge, please. Okay, thank you. Ms. McGill, would you call roll, please?
Chair Wiscombe.
Here.
Trentacosti.
Here.
Alley.
Here.
Case-Spear. Ferrara.
Here.
Intern Yee. And Gonzalez and Longstreet are not present.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McGill. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Ms. Rapp? Okay, thank you. Anyone here for public comment that's on an item that's not on the agenda that didn't fill out a speaker slip? Okay, seeing no one here for public comment, we'll close public comment. And we'll move on to the Youth Council report. And Ms. Yee, welcome.
Thank you. Not much to report today. We recently reviewed our Youth Council applicants, and we selected two to be recommended to the City Council at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, and I guess that council decides is it in next week or, yeah, the week after? That's what I thought. Okay, great. Okay, we're going to move on to Commissioner Committee assignment reports, and we'll start with Ms. Alley.
Thank you. The Creeks Advisory Committee did not have a meeting in November, but I did get an opportunity to meet with Cameron Benson, and he's just a wealth of knowledge, and I got to ask a lot of questions, and I hope to make some visits down into the actual creeks themselves in the near future. So it was more of an information gathering session for me, and I really appreciate his time and his staff's time for briefing me, and I look forward to attending December's meeting and reporting on that to the Commission.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Alley. Mr. Ferrara.
Yes, I attended the November 14th, 12 meeting of the Neighborhood Advisory Council, and the main presentations was Jessica Grant gave presentations, two of them, one on the Neighborhood Eastside Transportation Management Plan, its goals and objectives, and also the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force 2014, the 2019 CIP, and the CDBG, and a list of the projects that was discussed, and the NAC prioritized those projects with recommendations, and also talked about many other different things that were involved with those two, and the members voted their project preferences also on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Ferrara. And we'll move on to Mr. Case-Spear. Do you have anything?
This month I started my term as a liaison to the Arts and Crafts Fair, and I met with Jason Bryan actually twice for my initiation process, which ended up being a walk down Cabrillo Boulevard on Sunday and talking with many of the exhibitors. And the topic of conversation, which we will be dealing with tonight also, is the Cabrillo Bridge replacement and the impact it's going to have on a number of exhibitors. And I just want to say publicly that we are absolutely concerned and aware and going to do our darndest to make this transition a smooth one. In addition, I attended the dedication of the Mesa Lane steps yesterday, and if you haven't been down, they're safe, and they're good to go for another 50 years. Really a good investment for our community. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Case-Spear. Mr. Trentacosti?
Yes, I attended the November 14th meeting of the Golf Advisory Committee. And just a little bit of news from that. Rounds this year are about even with last year. Revenue is a little bit below. but some of that is for good reason. There have been a lot more junior rounds, and also we're getting a lot of business from the hotels. So that's actually good news in a way. The play at forward tees are still being worked on, and they should be completed probably in the next week or so. There was a new oak tree planted at number 7 Green, replacing the tree that was there. And the Nine and Dine special that's being run is very popular. We're going to continue to run that, only the hours are moving for the winter from 2 to 5 to 1 to 4, and you'll see that being advertised. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting on November 1st, and the commission will be reviewing the items that STAC visited and made recommendations on. We'll review those today. I attended on the 14th of November the Park Foundation regular monthly meeting. And we're working on a fundraiser and our annual fundraising campaign. So I think all of you will be receiving letters, if you haven't already, asking for donation. And it's for a very worthy cause. We do a lot of great things. So, and I also, with Mr. Casepier, attended the Mesa Lane Steps ribbon cutting. And just to add to that, that project received a $200,000 state coastal conservancy grant, and it was a great partnership between the work was actually staged from Arroyo Burro Beach Park, and which is a county park, and so there was a great partnership between between the county and the city, and it just worked out really well. The project was completed in 1 month, and the permit was issued for a 90-day completion. So it was completed in a third of the time, and the steps they're really great. They're really great, and they're getting a lot of positive feedback. So. Congratulations to staff on that. That's really great. Okay, so we are going to move on. We have no commission and staff communications. Is that correct? Yeah. So we're going to move on to the consent calendar. And we have agenda item number 1, which is the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of October 24th, 2012. Does anyone have any changes or comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the October meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Mr. Farrar abstained from that. Okay. So that passes, and okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is Street Tree Advisory Committee items. And any action of the Parks and Recreation Commission made pursuant to the Municipal Code Chapter 15.24, Preservation of Trees, may be appealed to the City Council within 10 days of the Commission's decision. So for all of you that are interested in that. We're on to agenda item 2A1, which is 1132 Crestline Drive. Mr. Downey, welcome.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 1132 Crestline Drive has 3 mature Mexican fan palms. The applicant is requesting to remove all 3. The one closest to the driveway so that they can widen their driveway apron and to correct damage to the curb, sidewalk, and the other 2 trees are also causing that similar damage, and they want to prevent it from continuing. Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed the application materials And they recommend that the tree close to the driveway be approved on the condition that they install a designated street tree at a location to be determined by staff. Staff reviewed the site and determined that the only location that a tree could be placed would be closest to the third tree farthest from the driveway, and placing an additional tree in that location would create issues with maintenance and possible future removal of the other palm tree. It's difficult to get to the backside of the tree when you've got so many trees so close together. And then again, when it comes time that eventually the third palm tree gets removed, it's directly on top of a new tree, and it's very difficult to try and prevent the damage to the new tree. The Street Advisory Committee's recommendation only covered the tree closest to the driveway. Staff recommends that the other two trees be denied and that the commission add a condition to the first tree that they get a public works permit for the driveway apron, and staff does not support a replacement tree.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey. Is everyone clear on exactly what happened with that one? Okay. We don't have any public comment on this tree, so I'm just going to open it up to the commission for discussion. Yes, Mr. Ferrara?
Yes, Mr. Downey, I would like what degree of damage is being done by the two trees that weren't recommended for removal?
Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Ferrara, there is the sidewalk and the curb and gutter on each side of the tree are beginning to lift. The root pruning can occur when Public Works decides to make repairs to those sites. Likely it will not create an issue for the safety of the trees, and they can remain in place with those repairs.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Casebeer, did you have something?
I'd like to make a motion to approve staff's recommendation for 1132 Crestline Drive as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, and just to be clear, staff's recommendation is that removal of the tree closest to the driveway is permitted, removal of the other two trees is denied, and the other condition is that prior to removal of the tree closest to the driveway, the applicant or the owner must obtain a public works permit for extension of the driveway apron. Yep. Okay, great. So we're all clear on that. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 2B1, which is 307 Mellifont Avenue. Mr. Downey.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 307 Mellifont Avenue, the applicant is requesting to remove these two queen palms in the front setback. Concerns are that the fronds drop both on the wires that feed power to the house and the proximity to the sidewalk. They drop on the sidewalk. The applicant has already planted several fruit trees in anticipation of them being replacement trees for these trees. Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed the application materials and looked at the trees in their location and determined that the reasons were not valid. If I could add, the applicant also is concerned about the size of the tree in relation to the property. They seem to be out of scale in their opinion. The Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed all of that, and their recommendation is to deny the removals.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey. Okay, we have a couple speakers on this item. So the way this is going to work is when I call you, you may come up to the microphone, and I can give you each about 2 minutes. I can give you a little more if you need a little more time, but we're trying to. So the first speaker is excuse me one sec. Before I open it up for public comment, does the commission have any questions to Mr. Downey about this? I forgot, I wanted to get that stuff in there. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to public comment. So the first speaker is Mr., and pardon me if I pronounce this wrong, Christodoulou? Christodoulou? Is that, did I really butcher that, or is that?
Perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. You know how you very often don't see anything, you don't notice things, and then you become interested in something and you see it everywhere. We moved into this house in July, and we started planting things and moving things around and improving the property, and we never liked the presence of these queen palms, and I've been seeing queen palms since then everywhere. Yesterday, I happened to be driving on Olive Street, and I saw in a small cottage, which has a setback a little bit bigger than ours, but still small, somebody had planted 8 queen palms, and they looked very cute. They're about my height. And this is an example of what may seem like a good idea at some point, will very soon become a not very good idea, because these queen palms will grow and become very tall and become extremely out of scale with the neighborhood and certainly the house. This is the case with our property. The setback that we have is barely 13 feet. It's an old setback. These trees they don't provide much in the way of canopy, and they will this will continue to be a deficit as they grow. They're palms. They're not trees. It's a grass. The neighborhood, the street is a one-block street. It's a very modest scale, and what we have is not trees. It just doesn't fit. Now, in addition, we have the issue and the fear of safety. There are utility lines, more than just the power line, going essentially through both of these trees. And as it happened, 2 weeks ago when we had the last rains, a palm frond came down and started pressing on the power line. And my neighbor luckily noticed it because we were away for a week, and called the electric company, and they came immediately out and cut it off. This will continue happening. We have already replaced the trees, not with 1, not with 2, but with 9 additional trees in the setback. And of course, we added more in the back. And to be frank, we don't quite understand the reasoning behind the negative recommendation of the application.
Okay, I'll ask you to wrap it up, please.
In my follow-on write-up that I sent to the committee and to the commission, I was pointed to the code, and I listed all the points, and I simply cannot see which part of the code this application does not conform with. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we have one more speaker, Mr. Gaona. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I've lived on this street for 32 years. Unlike any commission that visits the properties on a once-a-month basis and looks around, I visit the property every morning, every night, lunchtime, which is why I was able to catch that palm frond that fell down. And to my surprise, the response from the Edison company was so rapid, it really brought to light the fact that safety beyond aesthetics is more of an issue. in the 32 years, I can list the many things that I've seen on Mellifont Avenue. I could also list the improvements. The palm fronds were certainly not an improvement. I'm an organic gardener. When Mrs. Becerra, who lived in that house about 15 years ago, when she planted the trees, I walked up to her and I said, "Do you realize this is the wrong place to put them?" And she said, "Well, they're not so big." And no racial slurs or anything like that. I'm Mexican, okay? And I said, "You know what? The thing is that we miss Mexico, we miss the palms, but we're not planting accordingly." I said to her, "It would be best if you remove them." Well, she didn't, but along the line, she also didn't take care of the property. Marcos, when he moved in, he's continued to improve the property from the previous seller. I support the removal of the palms. If you were there and on a windy day and noticing the trees getting taller and taller, the palm fronds come down with more force. They cover every one of the power lines, utility lines that come in. They're within 2 feet on 2 sides of the property. What you can't see on this one is the tree on the far right. If the palm fronds fall, they will also capture the utility lines of the other house. Safety is a concern. I would hate to be probably one of the only ones from this room that would be present when one of those things came down either on Marcos's head or the children that walk to Franklin School on a daily basis. I think safety beyond aesthetics is the most important thing. And my question to you is, yes, you have a job to review when the trees are to be removed, but yet no one is there when the trees are planted improperly.
Could you wrap it up, please?
So I would ask if you deny the removal of the trees. I would also ask if you would consider having it reviewed for a few more minutes to go out and look at it with deeper concern on the actual situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, that closes public comment, and I'm going to open it up to the commission for discussion. Does anyone have anything? Go ahead, Dick.
I have a question for you, Mr. Casebeer, on this. When homeowners purchase properties, are they given the regulations of the street tree and setback tree regulations? Are they made aware of that?
Oh, you're asking
Yeah, he's in
Commissioner
the real
Casebeer.
estate business.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, or does anybody have an answer?
Chair Wiscombe, Commissioner Farrar, there's no regulation that requires it, and I have, in my tenure, never been asked to supply the materials to any realtor.
Interesting. That might be a good idea to start something like that so people know what the regulations are and setbacks. But I went out and took a look at those trees today, and I found them to be in pretty good shape myself. I noticed the lines that run on either side, but the trees, I believe if they're healthy and they receive proper maintenance, I don't see a problem with them there myself. And so for that, I would go along and concur with the staff and advisory committee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Casebeer?
The last speaker who, during his concluding remarks, asked that he was wondering why these palm trees were not permitted. I'm curious to see if the property owner permitted the new trees that he planted in the front yard. Same kind of thing. People plant trees, and our charge is to maintain the urban forest. And once these trees become established, and it's the property owner's responsibility to maintain these trees. And if these low-hanging palm, or the branches of the palm trees, if they're cut off as they start to die, then they won't fall off. Mr. Downey, I have a question for you. Whose responsibility to trim these palm trees since they're in the setback and not on the sidewalk side?
Chairman Commissioner Casebear, before I answer that question, there's one item I neglected to share. New information about the request. There is a drainage problem in the yard, and the letter that the applicant sent to be forwarded to you just the other day mentions that they're going to be installing a French drain in the area of those trees. I just wanted to share that that was another reason that was added late. To answer your question, the homeowner's responsible to maintain those. The one unique thing about these palm fronds, they do not fall off until after they turn brown. Once they turn brown, they're no longer viable and providing any function to the tree, and they can be pruned off at that time before they fall. But it would be the homeowner's responsibility to maintain those trees.
In addition, I'd also like to compliment the homeowner on the improvements that he has made to that house. It was in pretty sad shape before, and now it's vastly improved, so thank you. Well, and I would concur with staff's recommendation to keep the palm trees.
Anacosty?
Just a question for Mr. Downey. My neighbor has a couple of queen palms, and I've been kind of watching them over the last few years, and it seems like it takes those palm fronds a long time to fall off. You can kind of, they turn brown, and then they start tipping over, and then eventually they fall down, but it seems like a pretty long process. About how long do you think it would be that someone would have to recognize the fact that it needs to be pruned and then actually prune it?
Chairman Commissioner Tranakowski, these being biological beings, each one is different. Humans have to cut their hair at different rates. You know, it's just nature. But typically, it will be several weeks that it's standing on the tree brown before it begins to fall off.
You know, when I went out there with Stack, I absolutely agreed that, you know, these trees should stay. But by the letter that we received from the property owner, you know, this French drain is a new issue, and that's something that Stack didn't know about. And I'm thinking that there's two things here. First of all, there's the issue of the installation of the French drain, and that may interfere with the root system of the trees and compromise them. The second thing is that this property owner has done a great deal of planting of trees. That was noted by Stack when we went out there. They planted a lot of trees that are going to have horticultural benefit to the neighborhood when they get older. They're not necessarily now because they're tiny, but they will have a chance to grow. And that was a comment that was made by Stack. They actually said that you know, planting other trees underneath the palm trees, and when they fill in, the owner should come back and reapply. Well, the owner is planting trees, so I think that's, and I guess my feeling is that with the fact that they want to fix their drainage problem that's affecting their basement and install that French drain, if the commission could see it clear to condition removal of the trees on the installation of the French drain, as per the yeah, you know, study by Alex Cole, yeah, is what You know, I would be fine with that because I think that the property owner is trying to do the right thing. They do want trees. They've put in trees. They're going to bear fruit, and I would be okay with that. I don't know, Mr. Casebeer.
What would you be okay with? I'm not clear. What?
I'd be okay with allowing the owner to remove the 2 trees under the condition that the French drain gets installed and that, you know, the new trees that are on the property are taken care of. But that's something that the owner's going to do anyway because they've just planted those trees. They planted, I think, 9 trees or something on, yeah. So I'm feeling that, you know, those trees, I have a neighbor that has fruit trees on her property, and she's actually got her whole front yard is all food. But there is a benefit to a neighborhood of having that. So,
Well,
so I'm throwing that out
the
there.
business about the French drain is a French drain to prevent seepage into a sub-area is typically a trench dug right along the foundation
Right.
line.
Correct.
So it might be 12 to 18 inches wide, and these trees are 10 feet from the foundation. I can't see how, with a diligent contractor, you know, digging the root system of these palm trees, do they go out 10 feet, Mr. Downey?
I'm sorry, I can't let you speak because we've closed public comment. So this is, it's just the rule.
Chairwoman
So,
Commissioner Casebeer, palms are one of the trees that can withstand construction much closer to them than many other trees. If it makes sense, possibly a motion that would offer the ability for staff to go and assess the tree roots once the drain is being installed might be an option as well.
Okay. In other words, have an administrative decision made on the trees at the time that the French drain is installed. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Downey?
Or a motion that would approve removal on the condition that the French drain is installed and the drain would impact the safety of the trees.
Okay. I actually like that. I think, and I would be willing to make that motion. So we're making a motion, I'm making a motion that when the French drain is, would you repeat that one more time? When the French drain is installed, an administrative, someone will go out, staff will go out and look at it, and if the trees are impacted, they are allowed to be removed. Is that what you're saying?
That's certainly one way to do it, Chair.
Yes. Mr. Ferrara.
I would like to make a suggestion because according to this letter, where the trees are at now would impact the drain. So why don't we have the applicant come back in, say, a month or two with the plans of that drain so we can take a look and then administratively or either do it that way or administratively and see where we're at that time and see whether those trees are going to impact the placement of that drain or not, and then make a decision at that time, at a later point.
Well, I think we could do that, but I think in fairness to the applicant who's gone through the process, I think we could actually make a decision to allow administrative approval of removal of those trees when the French drain gets installed, if the trees are materially impacted, negatively impacted by the installation of the drain. So that's, I'd kind of like to stick with that motion that I just made. Do I hear a second to it?
Let's hear it again.
Okay. That upon installation of the French drain, the staff will inspect the root systems of the trees, and if they are negatively impacted, they can make an administrative decision to allow the homeowner to remove the trees. Yes.
I suggest that this inspection be made during the installation
Right.
of the
Yes.
French drain,
Yes.
so that the dirt, they can observe.
Right, okay.
the
So if I didn't make that clear, that's my motion.
I think I share those sentiments. My familiarity with French drains is minimal, but I would imagine that there's either a generous easement or give way or minimal. And if it's taken into consideration that the intention is to preserve the health of the two trees while building the French drain, that would be my preference, to take the health of those trees into
Okay.
consideration, do everything to preserve their.
Okay, well, we shouldn't, okay, I don't mean to interrupt you,
No, that's-
but actually, we should not be discussing this until, if someone wants to make a second to the motion, if not, the motion dies, and then we can open it up for discussion. Yes, I made my motion, and my intent, yeah, I accept the revision that it be done while, inspection be done while the French drain is being constructed. So does anyone have a second to that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Alley, you may continue.
I've made my general idea, but I can reiterate for purposes of procedure. I would like to see that the review of the construction of the French drain be simultaneously done with the review of the health of the root system for the two trees, because I'm imagining that there is a way to build a French drain with minimal impact to the trees versus maximum impact, and I would like to see it be done with minimum impact, knowing that the idea of or the preference of the commission is to preserve the trees.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Trinacosta.
I actually like Mr. Farrar's idea of having the plans brought in and reviewed, because it might be easier for the applicant, because if it gets to the point where they're digging the trench and it gets denied for the trees, then he's got the problem all over again. And this way, it might be a little bit easier to look at the plans and see how it impacts the tree, and then go through that decision process, because we go out there and the trench is there and staff says, no, they can stay, then the applicant's back in the same place he started.
Well, actually, first of all, I don't think we're qualified to sit here with plans and know where the root system of the tree is and sit here and look at engineering plans. We're not qualified as a commission to do that and make a judgment on the trees based on plans we see in front of us. I think it's got to be done in the field. Secondly, we could condition the motion, not condition it, but say that it is the commission's desire that the trees remain, and that, as Ms. Alley said, that when the French drain is installed, mitigation measures, if possible, to save the trees be implemented. But I don't feel comfortable sitting here with a set of plans
Wiscombe?
and doing
I
that.
didn't
Chair Wiscombe?
mean that we would.
Yes, Mr. Downey.
Might I propose another option?
Please.
That the decision be postponed. Allow the applicant to provide staff with the plans, then I can make a determination about the impacts on the tree, and then provide you with my opinion based on plans.
Okay. Okay, well, I will withdraw my original motion then, and I will make that motion that we postpone the decision until staff has had time to review the plans for the French drains in relation to the impact on the trees.
Yes, that way we know that the plan is actually moving forward.
Do we have a second to my motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. And I think, that'll be, when that comes back, will be whenever the applicant gets the plans together. So, okay. Okay, we're going to move on to item 2B2, which is 1265 Kenwood Drive. Mr. Downey.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, 1265 Kenwood Drive is surrounded on two sides by public roads. The tree is actually located on the backside of the property adjacent to Mountain View Drive. The tree is a tall Monterey pine that is within the setback. The applicant is not the owner. The applicant is requesting to remove it for various reasons, fire being one of those, and their visibility of their view was another reason. The homeowner was a little concerned that it leans and might fall over. Staff reviewed the safety of the tree and determined that sometime a long time ago it did lean, but it has corrected its growth and stabilized. The committee reviewed the tree and their recommendation is to deny the removal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey. We don't have any public comment on this, so we'll open it up to the commission. Mr. Ferrara.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Committee on the tree there at 1265 Kenwood Drive.
A second.
Okay, that was seconded by Mr. Trinacosti, I think. Okay, and any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that carries unanimously. Great. So now we're on to 2C1, which is the 0 to 100 blocks of Kimberly Avenue. Mr. Downey?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, the 0 to 100 blocks of Kimberly Avenue currently runs behind the businesses on State Street off of Mason. The Public Works has initiated a project to replace the bridge at Mason Street, which will realign Kimberly Avenue somewhat. In addition to that, there's a project going on at the corner of Kimberly and Mason that will provide parkway space for street trees. The parkway space that will be available is smaller than other sections of Kimberly Avenue. So the request came in to look at the tree designations to find trees that would fit into that smaller space. Street Tree Advisory Committee reviewed several trees, and they are recommending the firewheel tree pictured above. Just a matter of interest, the way the tree got its name was based on its flowers shown in the right photograph. It looks like a fiery wheel. Stenocarpus sinuatus firewheel tree is recommended for the 0 to 100 blocks of Kimberly Avenue.
Okay, and I'd just like to say, this is one sheet of paper in your packet, but this was many, many months of work by Street Tree Advisory Committee. They did a great job. They had a huge list of trees to review for both of these sites, for both Kimberly and Mason, and they did a really thorough job. So, okay, I'm opening it up to the commission for discussion, or?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Farrar.
This Chinese flame or the firewheel tree, does that bloom at a certain time each year? And the second part of that question is, do we have them in other areas of the city where it's been planted and exists? Looks really good.
Chair
looking
Wiscom
street.
and Commissioner Farrar, we have them on many streets. The largest ones we have are in Casiano. The tree in the picture on the left and the picture of the flowers are from trees on Casiano Drive. The tree blooms in the fall, September, October usually. We sometimes in Santa Barbara actually get 2 blooms and get one in spring as well.
Beautiful.
I'll move to accept staff's recommendation to designate the street tree for Kimberly Avenue as noted.
I'll second.
Okay, and I think STAC has this as an addition to the list, right? Is that correct, Mr. Downey?
Chair Wiscom, that's correct.
Okay, so Mr. Caseberg, would you mind, if it's okay, would you revise your motion to add it as an addition?
As an addition.
Thank you. And the seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, great. So, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. That carries unanimously. So now we move on to the 0 block of West Mason Street. Mr. Downey.
Chair Wiscom and Commissioners, the 0 block of West Mason Street runs between State Street and through the bridge all the way to the next street over. Unfortunately, the name has slipped my mind. Chapala, correct. Thank you. The current designated tree is the lemon bottle brush. The older sections of West Mason in this block have much smaller parkways. There are 2 projects going on fronting State Street on either side of West Mason that will provide larger space for street trees than that would allow for larger trees than the lemon bottle brush. So the committee took on looking at what might work out there. The committee looked at 2 trees, looked at several trees, but they decided on 2 trees to recommend. They felt that the Mexican fan palm would look rather stately at the intersections as kind of signature trees, and that is consistent with trees that already exist on State Street, and recommend also the jacaranda. These 2 trees are recommended by the committee to replace the lemon bottle brush as designated trees for the 0-100 block of West Mason.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Downey. I think the jacarandas were recommended at the intersections, and the Washingtonias mid-block is my recollection of the meeting. Am I getting that wrong? Because that's the
Chair
notes I
Wiscom,
had.
according to the minutes, it was the other way around. But regardless, if you concur with STAC's recommendation, the placement would be up to staff, and
Right.
we could look at that.
Okay, great. Yep. Okay. Anyone else?
Just a question.
Yes.
My question is, and so everybody can understand this, so those trees will be planted as these other trees become older and need to be replaced, and the new trees will be placed in their place?
Chair Wiscom and Commissioner Farrar, the projects will provide new planting locations. And then as the lemon bottle brush or other existing trees die or are removed for other various reasons, these would be the trees that they would be replaced with.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Do I hear a motion or?
I'll make a motion
Okay, thank you, Mr.
that we
Treehouser.
approve the designation of the jacaranda mimosifolia and the Washington robusta for the 0 block of West Mason Street.
Okay, I'll second that motion. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Downey. Now we're moving on to agenda item number 3, new business, which is the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge Replacement Project with the Beachway Relocation Addendum. And
Chair
Yes.
Wiscom and Commissioners, before we head into the presentation by Jessica Grant, who is the Public Works Project Manager on this project. I'd like to just give a brief introduction. This project is coming to you as kind of an outgrowth of the Cabrillo Bridge replacement project, which has been before you and been discussed by numerous boards and commissions over the years. It's been a project over many, many years to get moving forward. But this is one of those opportunities where, as staff sat and looked at the plans, that we realized that there was an opportunity to make an improvement in the area where the project was being done that will significantly improve how that area is used by our visitors and Santa Barbara residents on a daily basis. And so, although there's no funding at this point for this project, we, staff of the various departments, Waterfront, Public Works, Parks and Recreation, we are all interested in seeing whether we can make this happen. So this would have some significant impacts. We're talking about putting in a permanent pedestrian bridge that would go over the creek, so relocating the bridge, and Jessica will go through that, and she has diagrams for you. But it would have some impacts to how the area is currently used, most especially by the Arts and Crafts Show. So after Jessica does her presentation of her report, I've asked Jason Bryan, who is our staff who supports the Arts and Crafts Show, to give you a report on what some of the issues and concerns are raised by the Arts and Crafts Show members. And because I think it's really important, but it is also very important, this is an opportunity to make an improvement overall for the daily use of this area. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica.
Good afternoon, Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name is Jessica Grant. I work at the Public Works Department. And in my 10-year history at the city, it's my first time going before the Parks and Rec Commission. So thank you for having me tonight. So as Nancy, Ms. Rep mentioned, I will be discussing the Cabrillo Beachway relocation. I plan to discuss what's at issue with the existing beachway and how it is connected to the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge replacement project, and also what is needed process-wise to make this relocation happen. So with that, at issue, when you think about the beachway, as indicated here along with the mouse, the entire beachway goes along pretty much the majority of Cabrillo Boulevard. And when you visualize the beachway, and I'm sure most of you have also used it, it's a mix between bicyclists, rollerbladers, series, moms with joggers, walkers, so really a multi-use path. What's unique about this section of the beachway is this is the only area of the beachway that runs immediately adjacent to the Cabrillo Boulevard sidewalk, as indicated here. And so what we're seeing in this area is you have, again, kind of more the faster moving users that are using the beachway. And then this portion right about here is where the MTD shuttle lets off. There's the Land Shark, Santa Barbara Trolley, and then just the general traffic flow for pedestrians there. And it's introducing a lot of slower moving users. And some of it is just people just getting off the trolley or Land Shark. Could be their first experience with the waterfront, and you know, it is mesmerizing. We all treasure the waterfront area. And so what's of concern is that people want to experience the waterfront. They're starting to move out, get maybe a better or closer look at the area, not really realizing that they're about to step on the beachway. That's a faster moving path. And so therein lies the conflict. And this area has been identified as the highest conflict zone of the Beachway. And the person that usually pays the brunt of the conflict is the bicyclist or the rollerblader trying to do the last minute jog from the unpredictable pedestrian walking out onto the path. This is just a couple shots of from the land shark. And this is also, of course, prime area for the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show. It has been in our community for over 40 years, and the issue is sort of compounded on Sundays when the art show is happening, because that, again, introduces a lot more slower users, pedestrians in that area, and then for them not really realizing that they're about to step on the beachway. This is just some pictures of the beachway in action. This is one I think a planning commissioner had sent me on the before, and again, the people are using it. Yeah, again, that just kind of conversation area, and then that's when again you have the issue of maybe them walking out in front of a cyclist. So how do we solve this conflict? Well, what staff is proposing is that instead of the beachway being relocated here, that our existing location, that we move it out approximately 59 feet and put it here. And so this, instead of having the beachway jog and go this way, you have a much more direct shot to get across Mission Creek. So how is this all connected now to the next topic is how is it connected to the Cabrillo Bridge replacement project? Well, that's an existing project. It's been approved back in 2008 by the Coastal Commission. It has been, it's still in the process, but we're still in the right-of-way phase for that project. And so we're seeing that project as an opportunity to do an amendment to that existing project and relocate the beachway. In addition to it helping solve the circulation issue, it won't completely solve the circulation issue. We're not trying to argue that 100% those conflicts will not be there, but we definitely feel it will be lessened. Another benefit for having it with the Cabrillo Bridge replacement project is that project already includes temporary relocation of the beachway during construction, because when they demolish the south side of the bridge, we need to continue to have pedestrian access along Cabrillo. So this would allow us the opportunity, instead of building the temporary bridge and then after the temporary bridge and then relocating all the utilities on the temporary bridge, and then after that, when they would reconstruct, because as part of the approved project right now, the beachway would go back into its location, and then you would basically then have to demolish the temporary beachway, etc. One benefit is just to do it one time. You have build the permanent beachway, you relocate the utilities one time. In terms of money, that it's approximately a $500,000 savings to do this. So that's another reason why we were pursuing this. It did come up in the project's value engineering analysis to evaluate this. This is not the exact design. This is just having fun with Photoshop. This is a bridge that is actually over Sycamore Creek along Cabrillo. Oh yeah, I'm waiting for thank you, Nancy. So what we did was we took the bridge that, again, is over Sycamore Creek along Cabrillo Boulevard, and we've put it in as what it might look like in the relocation area. This part right here, this is the existing wall along the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge sidewalk. And so what we deleted is right now in the normal picture, there's the beachway right here. So now people would be able to see from the sidewalk, actually experience the water right here. And then there would, as I mentioned, this bridge would have the substructure. It would be probably about 3 feet thick and to carry utilities. And then up above would be sort of a lighter railing here. So fairly similar. The only thing with the span of the bridge, we would have a center support, and that's just as the approved beachway. It's the same thing if we were to move it out 59 feet. We would still need to have that center support. So what is this all? Oh, and I forgot to mention one other thing. As part of some of the utility relocations, in one item that we are also under evaluation, this is the existing dredge pipe for our dredging operations along the waterfront. It's a subjective comment, but some people see it as an eyesore in the waterfront for the experience. And so we were also looking at the opportunity for underneath putting the dredge pipe, a permanent pipe, so when the dredging contractor comes every 3 years, they could hook into that permanent pipe so they don't have to every few years have this pipe location. And also, as part of the bridge replacement project, we're going to be doing a lot of lagoon restoration in this area, and that would be a really nice benefit to not have to deal with the dredge pipe. So what's this all mean process-wise to make this happen? What's required from an environmental standpoint is we're required to have hydrology report and then cultural resource addendum, specifically the historic structures report addendum to the existing one. And we need to have the Coastal Commission process and the addendum, and we need to, Planning Commission, this is in the original jurisdiction of the coastal zone, so it is under the purview of the California Coastal Commission. So when that happens, and when we ask for Planning Commission review, we ask for them to provide comments to the Coastal Commission. We also have to have agency review, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and Department of Fish and Game, and also Caltrans review. As Nancy had mentioned, we're investigating funding, and that we continue to do that with this project. The funding source for the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge project is just recently was changed from the Safety Loop program under the Highway Federal Bridge Program. I'm not sure if I got that one right. And then it recently changed over the summer, and now Safety Loop turned into MAP 21. So everybody's learning what all the funding requirements are for that. And so that's why we're having a delay for the response to regarding the funding. So review to date, the Planning Commission has reviewed this in concept back in March, and they're the ones that gave staff the okay to evaluate this concept for relocation. Like I said, we will be required to go back to Planning Commission once the environmental review has been completed. Historic Landmarks Commission has also reviewed it and has given it positive comments. I believe that there had been plans included in the staff report, so that's what they were provided. And the Transportation Circulation Committee, they review it from a circulation standpoint and feel that the relocation is consistent with the circulation element. We also went before a couple of weeks ago, and Mr. Bryan will discuss that a little bit more, but we did receive comments on that. And this is essentially a graphic that I showed them about impacts and opportunities to the art spaces. Ms. Rapp, do you mind turning the light off real quick again? So this is indicated in green are all the existing art spaces that front Cabrillo in this area too, in this area. And with an X are the spaces that with this relocation, if we were to pursue and receive permits for this, these are the three areas that would be impacted. And then in this, I guess, purple color are opportunities for more artist space area. One of the comments that was brought up during the meeting was to have between the first and second row, maybe for us to explore a different type of surface, such as decomposed granite along here. And I'll have Jason speak to the other items. For tonight, we request that Parks and Recreation Commission provide comments to the Planning Commission, and we hope that you continue to support this concept and have it move forward. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grant. That was a great presentation. Appreciate that.
Jason?
Mr. Bryant? Oh, sorry. Ms. Rep?
That's fine. We both did the same thing.
Welcome. Nice to see your face.
Thank you, Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners. I have been, if you can go to the overview of, yes, that one, perfect. I personally worked 2 of the last 3 Arts and Crafts Show Sundays, speaking with all of the artists, taking attendance and doing the normal business of the show. We also had the Arts and Crafts Show Advisory Committee meet on Tuesday, November 13th, and this is, as Ms. Rapp said, a very popular topic of a conversation among show members. The bridge replacement project is not an unknown. We've had 7 stays of execution. We're on our 8th project manager from Public Works on this, so we all knew this was coming, but the project has changed over the years. The construction methods have changed. The scope is now a little bit more understood. We're just starting to get our first maps on the project right now. Show members have expressed concern over several areas of the project, but we know it has to happen, and it's going to be painful when it happens no matter what. It's not going to be a surprise to anyone that's in the show. I'll kind of review some of the concerns that I have received from show members and that were brought up at the advisory committee meeting. The areas that you see on purple in this map, those are the second row spaces. There are currently second row spaces already within the show. The green spaces are the ones that we have assignments where an artist has the right to those spaces, and there's a fairly complex set of rules that specify how spaces are claimed in the show. So it's not that those are brand new spaces. This does represent a relatively small portion of the show. The show goes all the way down to Cesar Chavez. So this is the impact zone where most of the pain is going to be felt for the show. Many of the artists that are within this area are particularly concerned because the existing bike path basically channels all of the traffic right into the show zone. They're concerned that by having the beachway straighten up, that people are going to be attracted to this bridge and basically kind of bypass the show. Jessica did present that there is going to be signage, that this is for faster moving traffic, trying to route pedestrians through the safest possible route. And staff, we realize that safety is of paramount importance for any project that's of this size and scope, and any opportunity to improve safety is something that we need to consider. But I'm just expressing what I've heard from the show members, especially the ones that are in this area. So rerouting traffic was a concern of the show members. Another was to, and I think Public Works has done this and have taken this into consideration throughout their process, is to try to retain as much turf as possible. We don't want to lose as any park space if we don't have to lose park space. There's some reasons why we do have to lose some, and that was communicated, and I think that's understood. But the message was, if there's an option to retain some, let's do everything that we can to retain that area of turf and that area of parkland in the beautiful beachfront area. A third concern that was brought up is to try to retain as much on-street parking as possible. Parking is critically important to show members who are setting up and taking down. And in years past, there was some parking that was lost on the far side of the show, and it was communicated at the advisory committee that had a pretty significant impact to the members that were in that area. And this has been communicated to Public Works, and they have taken that to heart and have integrated that into their plans. But that's one of the communications that was made. in addition to, doing what we can to make those second rows more accessible by possible DG pathways or other considerations, those were suggestions made at the advisory committee by show members. They would like to understand a little bit more about the signage and the public outreach on what's going to happen to educate the public that are visiting these tourists that are coming off of Stearns Wharf on what are the routes to take, not only during the construction process when there's going to be a visual barrier, you're not going to be able to see the show very well as you're stepping off of Stearns Wharf. But then afterwards, when the construction project is completed, they want to understand a little bit about, okay, how is the city going to approach that and communicate what this new bike path is for? And as Jessica stated, this is more faster moving traffic, but we know we're not going to be able to prevent people from, walking on which it's going to be a beautiful view on the bridge. So the reality is that there will be some pedestrians on the bridge along with faster moving traffic, but they just want to understand a little bit more about the signage and the public outreach during and after the construction project.
So I think in the interest of trying to represent the concerns of the Arts and Crafts Show, there are a couple of other things, if you haven't worked that closely with the Arts and Crafts Show over the years, that I'd like to share. There is well, first off, people own their spaces, not literally, but figuratively. So some people who have been in the show since the show began, which is 48 years, there's a real sense of ownership of their particular space. So that's important, just to really recognize the impact to someone who's been conducting their business, because it is a business, in that same location for many, many years. And the artists generally believe that the spaces that are at the front end of the show, closest to the wharf, which again is this area, have a greater potential to generate revenue and sales than the artists further down the line. I can't tell you whether that's true or not, but certainly I've heard enough over the years from different show members that there's a very strong belief that that is true. So those issues that they'll have are emotional and based in fact of some impact to them as artists. We are talking, I believe, we're still trying to work out what it would look like and how might we redesign the spaces, but I am sure the potential of having fewer spaces is very real. But I don't know what that's going to be. We're trying to work it out so that, we have all of, we can answer everybody's questions, but until we have exact drawings and until we go down and really mark out all of the spaces. So there is the potential that we may lose a few spaces, which means they'll have to be relocated down and it could impact others. So these are complex planning discussions, but from the department perspective, it would be a one-time permanent change that actually has a greater benefit for the community in the long term. And so we are committed, and we've already been in these discussions with Public Works about signage, about maybe doing some enhancements when the show is actually up and operational to give it a better visual appearance in that area. I mean, we're really trying to come up with some ways to address what we know are their concerns. So, but I just wanted to provide that little bit of background for you, because sometimes if you haven't had a lot of experience with the show and the show members, that piece kind of, you don't understand why the emotions are so strong, but it really is where they conduct their business, and they've been doing it for a number of years. And on top of that, all of the impacts that are temporary impacts from the bridge rebuilding process will be on top of this. So it will be the temporary impacts plus then we'll have permanent impacts with the relocation of the beachway. And with that, I think if you have any questions for staff, we'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rapp. Mr. Casebeer.
Thank you, Ms. Grant and Mr. Bryan. I know you're working diligently to pull this off. I've got a couple informational questions that the public who's watching this might be interested in. The temporary impact of the construction zone where the artists will have to be relocated temporarily would be on either side of Mission Creek. The green and purple areas, would you say that will become the construction area, staging area for their heavy equipment?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Casebeer, I do not have the exhibits for the construction for the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge project, but in concept, there's three major stages for construction of the bridge. The first stage really has little impact. That would be the one that would start off in the fall of 2013. That's the tentative timeline right now, trying to prep the site. The second phase would basically be demolishing the north half side of the bridge. Basically, the construction team would need to have use of these areas to provide some staging, and then also what the approved project right now would call for a temporary beachway to construct. So the temporary relocated spaces, to get to your question, would begin in this area. If you see the arrow right here.
There's an existing sidewalk there.
Yes, there's an existing, it's just adjacent to the skate park, essentially. And then we have a larger exhibit that spans out the area a little bit more, but then it would again run along Cabrillo, that to the right, and also look at maybe exploring a second row in behind those spaces. One item that was mentioned for consideration by some of the Arts and Crafts Committee was to maybe to the left of, so the Dolphin Fountain is right over here, it's off the aerial, but on the west side, I apologize, I'm a planner without a sense of direction, but on the west side, to maybe look at that area as well.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Casebeer, can I just ask a clarifying question? Because I don't want to get too much into the Cabrillo Bridge replacement project, because that's not before you tonight. But if you had a clarifying question that we could answer that would help you communicate what you're trying to communicate, we're happy to do that. But for the commission, what's before you is the beachway relocation tonight, and I realize it's complex, as you've been hearing. There are this is a part of a larger project, and I just want to make sure we're focused on the beachway relocation.
Okay, on the beachway, the figure of $500,000 had been mentioned as a savings. For the permanent beachway, which I'm totally, absolutely supportive of, I think this makes absolute sense. What kind of dollars are we talking about to construct? If we have those figures.
Yes.
And if we don't, we don't.
The ballpark cost for the design modification is in the realm of $3.7 million.
Yeah.
And then the other one, was, again, I'd have to go through all the bullet points. I am looking at the cost as a result of the value engineering, but it was around $4.2 million for the as approved right now. Yeah. A lot of that, where the savings comes in, is the one-time utility relocation.
But a beachway like this will benefit generations to come.
And just to put it in reference, I think the entire project is over, it's about $20 million, because it does involve some right-of-way acquisition as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ferrara, and then Ms. Alley.
Yes, I think this is quite an undertaking, but a good idea. My concerns on the Beachway would be safety. That's where I would focus my attention. You have a stretch there. I don't know exactly how long it's going to be, or wide, or high from the creek. But during major storms and high tides, I'm sure that's going to be taken into consideration, rising sea levels and such. But we're also going to have a lot of people who are going to, once they get out on there, and especially if there's a big flow of water underneath there, it's a lot of activity, a lot of excitement, and people are going to loiter on that bridge. They're going to stop there. And that's going to be the same area where you have, was close to the skateboarders, so they may be trying to go through there, bicycles and such. What about putting an alcove on both sides of that bridge, kind of like a half moon on either side, where people can get out of the way of the main flow of traffic on that bridge? Just something to consider. I don't know if it's long enough to, fashion that into it, but just something I was thinking about, because I know people are going to be hanging out on that bridge, especially during that time. But safety, I think, is one of our main concerns with that, because that's a lot of water running through there, and there's going to be a lot of tides and a lot of storms and such. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Alley?
First, I'd like to commend staff and all of the agencies that have been involved with this for years. It's a wealth of man hours, and so thank you. And I'm happy to be a part of the process now. My only question is about the reduced size or width of the bridge, going from 14 feet, going from the approved 18.5 feet to the narrow 14 feet. Is that narrow? Will it bottleneck, or is that the existing size of the beachway? It's just reduced from the original plans. How is that?
That was also one of my questions. Yeah.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner, I'm glad you asked that question. The thought process behind the width, the design, how it's designed right now is to meet all the standard engineering practices, and also for it to meet a Class 1 bike path. So there's lots of requirements for that as well. So one of the requirements, so the existing beachway is 10 feet in width leading up to it. So as part of the requirements is that having a bridge next to the adjacent beachway, that you at least need to have the minimum 10 feet. When you introduce a rail for the bridge, you need to have a buffer zone of 2 feet on either side. So that's how we arrived at the 14 feet. Making it wider, we weren't interested because we didn't want to encourage people to hang out in that location. So it's basically designed at the minimum. We are also in the land of endangered species in this area, and we wanted to keep also the footprint as minimal as possible.
So are you saying that the 14 feet is clear width? Okay,
Yes.
so the 2 feet on each side then is in addition to the 14 feet?
No, it would be 14 feet from, rail to
10
rail.
and then 2
Yes,
on each
yes.
side, equaling 14.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, once it lets out from the bridge, then it kind of tapers back down to the 10 feet.
Right, because it doesn't have railings anymore. Yeah, okay. Okay, I get it. And is that it for you, Ms. Alley? Okay, yeah, okay. I had a couple more questions. Does the change in the length of the span affect the work being done in Mission Creek? Because it's actually proposed to be about, I guess, about 17 feet. The span will be 17 feet longer than it was, so does that affect work going on in Mission Creek? I mean, will that mean you do less work because the span is longer, or more work, or?
The reason for the span of the bridge getting longer in this area is because with the approved project, when you go out there right now, there's a Sackcrete wall on both sides, and as part of the approved project, the slope will be laid back and the banks are going to be restored. So in order for this bridge to clear the restoration areas, we had to, and then of course the lagoon starts to open up a little bit wider there, so it was just to provide clearance. We did, again, have a hydrology addendum for this, and we are required for this to meet the Lower Mission Creek Flood Control Project flood design, which is 3,400 cubic feet per second. And so this bridge does meet the Lower Mission Creek Flood Control design requirements.
And, okay, I have a few more questions. And then there's going to be some palm trees removed, and I gather they will be replaced. Is that correct? There's 4, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that was part of the historic addendum that the Historic Landmarks Commission reviewed. And so, there will be palm tree removal, and then either relocation or replacement, and the exact locations of the replacement still to be worked out with staff. And again, we'd have continued coordination with the arts and crafts spaces too, to make sure wherever they're planted wouldn't be a major disruption to the future space locations.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, is there an increase, a net increase in turf associated with relocating the beachway?
Yes, Chair Wiscombe, there would be a net increase. I don't have the exact statistic, but there would be an increase. Although there is an increase in turf, some of the increase in turf would be area that we wouldn't necessarily recommend for arts and crafts space locations. So
right, but I'm thinking more. I'm thinking maintenance. I'm not thinking that. So and that's been vetted with Parks. Parks will maintain it, and that's okay. It's not significant that it's going to be a undue burden on, okay. And just my last question, and then I have a couple, and actually I have two more. Does the magenta area of let's call it proposed art space, does that square footage wise match the area to be lost?
It's not really pertinent to be square foot for square foot.
Right.
Because all of that square footage isn't necessarily usable. So we haven't quite gotten down to exact spaces, number of spaces, but it won't necessarily be related to the total square footage available, because some of that square footage is not going to be able to be used. So we're trying to salvage as many spaces in that area as we can.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have the exact configuration yet. Okay. And my last question is just related to the dredge pipe. You are planning on hiding the dredge pipe, is that correct? Putting it underneath, are you putting it underneath the beachway, or what? Where are you locating it?
The concept is to relocate it in the substructure of here, let me get to another graphic. So this would be essentially the substructure of the bridge. It would be about just over 3 feet in depth, and there would be the potential to put a permanent pipe underneath that bridge that would be approximately 22 inches in diameter. That permanent pipe, once it would leave the bridge, it would be underground, and the location has not been found, but it would be, I don't know, somewhere in here where the turf meets the sand. There's actually a grade drop in that area, and then same thing for the other side as well. And so if there was a future dredging contractor, they would have the underground pipe, because this is the only part that it daylights, it goes underground for a little bit, and then daylights goes underground again. So we'd have them connect here, and then, connect on the other side, and then continue to run all the way down Cabrillo. And again, we're still working out the details. So we have the waterfront's been in discussions as this concept has been developed, and we've also had some preliminary meetings with the Army Corps dredging contacts, because they're the ones that do all the permitting for that. And so we're still evaluating the exact details and how it would look like when it was bid every 3 years, et cetera. But
Okay.
that's essentially the concept of it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Excuse me. I think I most of all love the safety improvement separation of the sidewalk from the beachway. I use the beachway. I know what it's like, and that area is a real dicey area. So I think that for the community, I think that's a wonderful decision. Unfortunately, it is going to impact the arts and crafts show. I would like to see the Public Works work with the arts and crafts as much as possible with the goal to retain as many spaces and quality spaces as possible, because that's really what's key here. I thought the idea of the signage, not only during construction but afterwards, would be a real asset, and I think that's something that would really enhance the show and obviously help it during a difficult time when the bridge is under construction. I think that the 1 month schedule savings and the $500,000 in cost savings is a no-brainer, particularly in light of the fact that you get the public safety improvement to boot. I would like to see you work to hide that dredge pipe. I think, that's kind of a feature out there, and I would like to see that concealed so it wasn't tempting to people. Let's see. And I think, rerouting the pedestrian traffic, as Mr. Bryant mentioned, is a concern. So I would, also that's part of working with the show to make sure that goes as smoothly as possible. And maybe there are some connection points or something somewhere where something can be done to improve access to the actual exhibitors in the show. So those are my comments. Is anyone else? Yes, Mr. Casebeer.
Just one quick one. The Mesa Lane Steps was basically funded through California Coastal,
Conservancy.
Might this be something that we might pursue, since this is a visitor serving? I'm just throwing out as an idea. Ms. Zachary has some ideas.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Casebeer, whether the State Coastal Conservancy would consider this type of project as something they would fund, I don't have the answer for you, but I can say the focus is on coastal preservation, coastal restoration, and coastal access. Given that the city already has to replace this bridge, it's a matter of relocating the pedestrian portion of the bridge to a location that may be better in the long run. I don't know, based on my experience with that agency, whether they would pursue that. They would be interested in that type of project.
And you wouldn't rule it out running it by them?
No. What we're trying to do is still exhaust through our primary funder for the Carrillo Bridge Replacement Project to, again, try to have it as a participating cost for that bridge. There's different categories that had been under the Safety Loop program, and before there was the change this summer, we had tried to also try another grant source under the umbrella of that program, but then that went away, and so we're still continuing. And I should probably start to have answers in the next month or two in the event we do not. Funding is an issue through our funding program. We would, again, look to pursue for other sources, but we are remaining hopeful at this time.
Okay, Mr. Tranacosti?
Thank you both for the presentation. I had a lot of questions after reading this, and you answered just about all of them. Just a quick question. Are there any issues that make it problematic to add art spaces on the other side of the Dolphin Fountain? Because it seems like that would give us some more prime real estate art spaces.
This is a topic that's come up many times. A lot of the show wants to maintain the cohesiveness of the show, and it's a linear, connected entity right now. And many of the show members are concerned that, okay, by having this portion on the other side, that you're going to have people shopping over there and they'll stop at Stearns Wharf. So that's a legitimate concern. However, there's going to be a lot of pain for the artists that are in this area being displaced. There was quite a bit of work that was put into the Arts and Crafts Show Advisory Committee back when Hal Hill was the project manager when the project was first introduced. Judith McCaffrey was the staff person responsible for working through those plans. And we, rather than making all the decisions and telling the show members, okay, this is where you're going to be, it was a process of which we kind of involved the entire show. And from this point on, we're going to kind of review what the outcomes of those discussions were, take a look. The project has changed, not dramatically, but there have been some changes to it. And Judith is going to work with us and kind of bring those discussions back, and we'll review. And okay, we just considered this, and these are the pros of this this option and the cons of this option. But that was one of the objections to moving people on the other side of the Dolphin Fountain, is to have a disconnected show. Currently, the show does not go on that side. The only show that is there's a Fiesta show that's independent of the Arts and Crafts Show, and so one time a year, and it can be used for that. I believe there are even marker numbers on the beach wall there, but that was some strong opposition that I've heard that the show had. But we need to have these discussions again, and this is going to be something that we bring back to the advisory committee, particularly with the artists that are in this impacted zone.
I can understand the cohesiveness issue, but if you're only going to, say, replace the spots that you're losing, those would, I guess, since they're close to the wharf, they're considered prime real estate, right? So that might offset the issue. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you all very much. We appreciate the presentation. Ms. Grant, Mr. Bryant, thank you so much for coming. It was great, and I think, do we have? I think we have enough comments for council and planning commission to go forward with. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, is everyone all right to continue with the CIP? Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item number 4, which is the fiscal year FY 2014 to 2019 capital improvement program. And this is where we will review the capital improvement program that Ms. Zachary is going to present, and we will provide, what we do is we provide recommendations to City Council with a prioritized list of capital projects. Ms. Zachary, welcome.
Chair Wickham and Commissioners, Jill Zachary, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. Today's presentation will be fairly lengthy, so get comfy. We come to you with our 6-year capital program every 2 to 4 years, depending on on the city's schedule with looking at capital and funding for capital. The last time we had a comprehensive update to our capital program was about 4 years ago. This year, looking ahead to 2014, we're going into a new 6-year capital cycle. What we'll be talking about are sort of the purpose of the city's capital program, what we're proposing in our CIP, so the different projects. Your staff report has that information in a lot more detail than I'll go in right now. Discuss with you projects that we've identified could be on the list for funding requests for next year and the following year, and then also ask for the Commission to make recommendations that will ultimately get forwarded to the City Council. First, I'd like to just remind the Commission that we've recently completed a number of projects. The renovation of the restrooms at Plaza Del Mar and Pershing Park, the replacement of all the pole lights and other lights in Chase Palm Park. We completed the first year of the vegetation management project at the Bird Refuge. We recently had 2 ribbon cutting ceremonies, Shoreline Park and Mesa Lane Stairs. And then also another project which was funded through the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is implemented by our facilities division of our Public Works Department, is new park lighting at Ortega Park. And I would recommend that since the days are short, it's a great time to see park lighting, and it really enhances the park, and that's in the area where the Welcome House and the basketball court are. It's a great addition to that park, and it's a safety enhancement as well. We have 2 projects that are still underway. We're going to be breaking ground on the drainage improvements for the Cabrillo Ball Field in January, and that's a CDBG funded project. And then we're going into the 2nd year of our Bird Refuge project, which is a 5-year project. And the focus now is to plant natives where we've removed natives as mitigation for that work. Also want to just remind the Commission that we had 4 projects that were either in process or on the cusp of moving forward that are now on hold with the dissolution of RDAs in California and obviously RDAs in the RDA in Santa Barbara. And these include the Pavilion Bathhouse renovation, Chase Palm Park Playground, renovation of the Chase Palm Park restroom, and that's on the beach side of the park, and then also the Ortega Pocket Park development. So those are projects we were working on during the first 6 months of the years that we're no longer working on. When we look ahead to the next 6 years, as I mentioned, it's prepared during the annual budget process. It's a little bit ahead. We're here today. It's not April. We do look 6 years out, both planned projects, what we think we might want to do, and then also looking at long-term needs. Funding for the capital program, at least from the general fund, is done on an annual basis with the budget process. When we looked at updating our CIP, this involves a number of different staff in the department. We look at our existing projects. Sometimes we get to take some off the list. Usually that's because they're done, hopefully. Or they've morphed into something else. We might rephrase them. We look at the costs to the extent feasible. And then we look at things that we think need to be added to the capital program, because we operate our programs, our facilities every day, and there's always something that's changing. And so it's our opportunity to try to think ahead and say, well, what are we missing here? What should we also have in this program? When we move forward with looking at the next 6-year cycle, we also looked at, within the department, at what are our key needs in terms of infrastructure? What are the things that have been placed on hold that haven't had a lot of attention? not just over the last 5 years where we've had budget reductions, but over the long term, because many of our parks and facilities are aging, as you well know, and so it's sort of time like, okay, we can't just Band-Aid these anymore. We really need to take a closer look. And then also to focus our efforts when we look at the next 2 years on how do we enhance services, how do we meet today's priorities, how do we look at programmatically, how we systematically address things. Our whole capital program, just the general fund side, is just over $67 million. So there's some pie-in-the-sky projects in there, obviously, but they're in there because they could be key community needs in the future. For fiscal year 14 and 15, we've identified 6. As you know, if the world was our oyster, these are the ones we'd want to move forward. And projects totaling over $2.2 million in 14 and $3.8 million in 15. I'm also briefly going to let the Commission know that the Golf Fund has 3 projects in the capital program, total cost of $370,000. A lot of improvements have occurred over the golf course in recent years. And there's one project that's proposed for the next 2-year cycle. So existing projects and some of these again are projects you know about, so I won't go over them in detail. For 14 and 15 include the Cabrillo Ballfield improvements. The Commission's had extensive discussion about this. It was a project that had the potential for RDA funds, and now that we don't have a redevelopment agency, the project's currently unfunded. Although we are nickel and diming our way to improvements, including the drainage, and new pole lights will be put up this spring as well. So we've included that in our capital program. Cabrillo Pavilion, the Creo Gym wall spalling, park renovation, park restroom renovation, playground replacement. Proposed new projects, and I'll go into these in a little bit more detail in the subsequent slides, relate to specific needs, like the Career Recreation Center is beautiful. The renovation is fantastic. We don't have air conditioning in the ballroom. If we had that, that would enhance that facility both for the people who are in there using it and enjoying it, but also from a revenue standpoint for the department. The Ortega Pocket Park is the one that was identified for RDA funds, and I'll go into that in a little bit more. And then last spring, hired an intern to do an assessment and inventory of our signs and our plaques in 22 of our parks. So we didn't catch them all, but we caught the ones that are likely to have the most and do an assessment, and basically determined what we kind of already knew, that over 75% of them are in not so great condition, and some of them are old that they refer to portions of the department that don't exist anymore. So we would really like to undertake a comprehensive sign replacement program. Irrigation, parking lot maintenance, pool ADA regulatory improvements. So the selection for the next 2 years really is looking at community need, input that we've received over time, facility need, whether we think the project's feasible. You'll notice in the CIP there's ones that are in way outlying years. Well, we haven't begun working on those. So is it really feasible to propose funding right now? Maybe not. Funding potential, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a minute, cost, and then what it would take over a multi-year schedule to move the project forward. So as I mentioned earlier, Cabrillo Ballfield improvement is still a priority project for the department. It's something that garners a lot of interest from various sectors of the community. We're proposing 3 years of funding to do the design work and then to actually implement the improvements. I mentioned the drainage and lighting. We have a number of other things that need to occur at this facility: restroom renovation, other park lighting, landscape renovation, and then also looking at the feasibility of developing other recreational uses of the park other than the ball field, and that's something the Commission has also discussed. The Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse renovation, we were going gangbusters on that project until December 31st. The good news is enough work was done that we have some fairly well-developed schematic designs and concepts for how the promenade would be restored, how the downstairs might be reconfigured. We began looking at the upstairs, looked at ADA access, the type of site work that would be needed. to move the project forward. The business planning portion of the project progressed to the point where we feel like we have enough that we can wrap that up and move that forward as well. And as part of that, we came up with some better cost estimates for the project. So what you see in the capital program, $950,000, and then $8 million spread over 3 years, is actually $950,000 would take us all the way to breaking ground for construction, and the actual cost to build the whole project would be closer to $8 million. One of the things that's exciting about this facility, or we think holds some promise, is it's a project that could potentially garner some community support and community funding, not just rely on city funding, or not just rely on, at the time, potential RDA funding, but we could really look at ways to leverage different sources of funds. It was constructed in 1926. It has so much potential, and I think we would hope that that would be an opportunity to look at the community to buy in and join us in that effort. That's partly why it's proposed next year, because we have done enough work that we know we're on the road to moving this project forward if funding were available. Curio Gym has wall issues, water inundation issues. This is a project that's been going on. It's been on the list for a long time. We're hoping to actually move it forward in the second year of the 2-year cycle. Chase Palm Park renovation, that's another one the Commission's seen before. It's really so many different things about the park just need an upgrade because it's so well used and so well loved. Things wear out. Kids World, that's an ongoing discussion. One of the things we're proposing for the next 2 years is that the city actually put some more seed funding into construction costs rather than looking at it being an entirely community-funded effort. We have some money in the budget this year to sort of begin a more thorough assessment of what would be needed to bring it up to today's playground standards. But looking ahead, thinking that perhaps the city might have to contribute more funds as well. Park renovation, restroom renovation, we've been fortunate over the recent years, to have grant funds and RDA funds to do park restroom renovation. We're keeping it in our program. We would propose for next year that it be the Cabrillo ball field restroom, and then after that, perhaps the Alameda Park restroom. Those of you that have been in the Alameda Park restroom lately know that it's been a long time since it had an upgrade, and we also hear that from members of the community as well. Playground replacement. The last time we talked about playground replacement with the Commission, we had proposed Chase Palm Park. Council approved putting that on the list for RDA funding, and unfortunately the project didn't move forward before the RDA was dissolved. Since then, we've done some more work on our numbers to actually replace the playground. It is a custom playground. Most of what we do are off the shelf. They're just modified slightly for the environment. And then also we would add a playground for 2 to 5-year-olds, which is currently not there. There were some elements that have basically fallen apart over the years and been removed. So we're looking at about $350,000 to really replace that playground. Considering how long it's lasted so far and how well it's loved, it's one of those places that is quite unique for Santa Barbara. I mentioned the air conditioning, so I'll skip right over that. This is the site for the Pocket Park. This is at Bath and Ortega Street. This we've conceived conceptually would have a play area for smaller children, a playground, a walking path, lighting, some landscaping, and we've estimated that the project cost is about $247,000. Funding for this project may come forward because the project is considered what's called an enforceable obligation under the city's former RDA, and hopefully we'll find out more about that in the next couple of months. But we've done essentially all the work we need to do to move it forward if it were funded. So we've put it in our capital program because we want to make sure it still has a placeholder there in case something else happens. I mentioned our park and sign replacement program. This is just an example of one of our signs. It refers to the Parks Department. So as you know, it's been there for a really long time. There are lots of other signs, regulatory signs. We have parks that have too many signs. We have parks that have conflicting signs. We have all sorts of things going on. And really, our approach with this program is to streamline our signage, make it as effective as possible, bring it up to today in terms of design and appearance, and then implement it systematically through our park system so that we gain a similar visual appearance to our park users. And this is something that's been on certainly my to-do list for a number of years. And now that we've completed an inventory, we actually have a real sense of what's going on out there. I might add that everything is geo-referenced, so we have maps for every park that's been inventoried, and so we can tell you exactly where each sign is. One of the key issues that we come up against over and over and over again is replacing our park infrastructure. Once upon a time, we had more funds in our operating budget. We have some funds to do walkway repairs, to do minor park repairs. Over the years, it's been chipped away in an effort to reduce our costs. We're now at the point where we have so many different amenities in our parks and no systematic program or plan to replace them. And so it's really opportunistic, catch as catch can. And we have some parks that still have, you know, the old metal trash cans that look like, you know, sort of been kicked around the field a few times. And we have 1,000 trash cans in our parks. If you think of some of the stuff to maintain, it's like, wow, we have to know where they all are too and make sure that they're actually functioning. This would propose that we systematically go through and on a regular basis, like our playgrounds, is replace things on a replacement cycle. Park irrigation, system renovation. We have, let's see if I can grab my notes really fast. Maybe I don't have it here. 56, there we go. Irrigation systems that operate. And some of them are more than 30 years old. And, you know, and we have some parks that don't even have irrigation. We had some funds in our capital program back in 2007, 2008 to install irrigation. And those were some of the projects that got eliminated with the budget reductions. So we've looked systematically at all of our parks' irrigation systems and prioritize how we would do renovation replacement throughout our park system. It has an impact to our water costs, our labor costs. I mean, so there's labor savings, potentially water savings. It also can lead to our parks looking better if the irrigation's functioning better. So that's an objective that we have, improves the aesthetic appeal and therefore the services we can provide. The Commission's heard about this before in prior budget presentations. The last time there was a master plan for city parks and recreation was 1981. It's now 2012 going on 2013. That's not to say a lot of good things haven't happened since then. We've done feasibility studies. The general plan updates occurred. You know, there's been work to identify what our needs are, but nothing really specific to what kind of a master plan for our department, for the services and the areas that we manage for the public. So this is on our capital program. It's proposed for funding to really take a close look at our existing facilities, facility needs, looking ahead to the future for what we should be developing, rather than it being just opportunistic, putting in place a 30-year plan that addresses facility needs, both locally and then also taking consideration the region. Parking lot maintenance program, not a exciting program to have in your capital, but we have 16 parking lots that have no maintenance cycle whatsoever except opportunistic. We're fortunate that the Creeks Division is bringing in grant funds, and we'll have 3 more parking lots converted to stormwater infiltration sites, which is fantastic. And actually, pretty much all of the hard surfaces at Oak Park, which is more than parking lots. The picnic area will be converted. But we also have 9 parking lots that really need some level of maintenance. and no method to do that. So we're putting it in our capital program to call out this is a critical infrastructure need for Parks and Recreation. It's not something that's been planned for. We think we need to start trying to plan for it. And then pool ADA regulatory improvements. We have obviously compliance with ADA laws at the Los Baños. We have a pool lift system that allows patrons that need to get from the locker room up to the pool deck that are antiquated and difficult to maintain and require replacement, and it's about $150,000 to do that. And then also in our wading pools, increasingly a need to accommodate wading pool users that can't step down into a pool, that need to have some sort of other way of entry. And so what we're looking at is a beach-like entry for the Oak Park wading pool. That's something we think is critical to move forward in the very near future, because that is a wading pool where we believe over the long term we'll maintain that site. You'll notice in the capital program there's a discussion of the West Beach wading pool and the fact that there may be other ways to use that site. It's not proposed for the next 2 years because it's not as critical as something like this, but it is something else that we're also looking at. In your packet and then in a handout tonight, you got more information about the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force projects. These are projects that are identified by interdepartmental staff and also community members. These projects were reviewed by the Neighborhood Advisory Council week before last, and they really address neighborhood improvement needs throughout the city, whether they're sidewalks, lighting, park improvements. We got funds for a playground at the Eastside Neighborhood Park one year, enhancements at the Cabrillo Ball Field, other things that really enhance the neighborhood and provide neighborhood with better services. For the next 6-year cycle, there are 4 projects. Actually, for the next 2 years of the 6-year cycle, there are 4 projects that are currently proposed for potential funds in the next 2 years. Improvements to the Franklin Center, those are interior improvements. Cabrillo Ball Field, again, you'll see that comes up over and over again. We mention project sites in a lot of different places just because you never know the source of fund that might come up. Neighborhood community park enhancements, that's really speaking to the potential to install recreational enhancements such as adult fitness equipment that's weight-based, which is a new trend, and we've been looking at for some time and maybe think it's time to explore that. And then other improvements like improving a restroom at the West Side Center so that it meets ADA standards. I mentioned Golf Division. They have 3 projects. The one to move forward, proposed for moving forward in the next 2-year cycle, is actually a roof project, which is grouped under what's called the infrastructure renewal projects, the clubhouse roof leaking issue, and then in out years, the restroom leaking issue as well. Funding, and this pretty much wraps up the presentation. Right now, unlike 2 to 4 years ago, we don't have the same kind of sources of funds outside the general fund to look to for projects. We were fortunate enough to get State Coastal Conservancy grant funds for Mesa Lane Steps. That funding source is even drying up as well. We've had grants from the county Coastal Resource Enhancement Fund. The county's now focusing their funds on county-specific projects. And then we've also had federal sources that are no longer necessarily available to us or even exist. And then lastly, the city's redevelopment agency no longer exists, so that affects the potential for funding. That said, it may be that general fund sources improve. If revenues return and council determines more funds should be applied to the capital program. And then also the city council recently approved a new reserve policy. So funds left over that are unspent at the end of any one year, 50% of those go into what's called a capital sinking fund that then makes more funding potentially available to capital projects. How that plays out over time, it's unknown, obviously. It's really a council decision whether to move funds into the active council capital program, and likely to be a discussion for this budget cycle and something for the commission to consider as well. So with that, I would conclude the presentation and entertain comments, questions related to the overall CIP, projects proposed for the next 2 years, and then if the commission has any priorities. We didn't give you a prioritized list, mostly because we wanted to have a discussion, and sometimes priorities are really based on opportunities. So some of it sort of evolves over time as well. And next steps, just as a reminder, we are finalizing the capital program. Council will consider it. I got a presentation on it in February. I don't have the date right now. The Parks and Recreation Commission makes its formal recommendations on the entire budget in May, and then funding decisions get made based by council, in the budget approval process as available and prioritized. And we're not the only department in the city that will be looking for capital funds. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Zachary. That was great. Okay. Who has questions, comments?
I do.
Mr. Trentacosti.
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Zachary. In the past, we talked about the Armory and the Reserve Center. Are those things still on the radar? And would they be part of the CIP?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Trentacosti, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Oh, the Armory and the Reserve Center? Are those still on the radar, or?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Trentacosti, I'll start answering, and maybe Ms. Rapp wants to jump in too. Because those projects became so hypothetical, they're not currently in the capital program. That's not to say they're not on our radar. I think sometimes there are things on our radar, but they're just too unknown that to put them in the capital program. We make a determination that it's not the right time. That's not to say something has to be in the capital program for there to be movement on something. So sometimes, out of the blue, an opportunity will arise, and if it aligns with everything else, then we get direction to move forward and work on something. We also have the ability to do that.
Okay, so it's back burner, basically. Okay, and is there any capital equipment budget for the golf course that's planned, or?
Equipment is budgeted separately.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, from the capital. These are more infrastructure improvements.
Okay.
So the answer is yes, but it's
Okay.
different.
Because I'm used to budgeting that includes equipment as part of that, so, okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Anyone? Mr. Ferrara?
Yes, there's a lot of good things coming up and a lot of things that need to be repaired and taken care of within our capital program here. I think the ball field, the Cabrillo ball field is a priority because it's used by so many groups, and it definitely needs the upgrades. If we're going to keep that operating at nighttime, we need to have those new lights put in. I don't know about a fence. I mean, I think a fence in there would kind of stand in the way of a lot of other things that field could be used for, but that's neither here nor there. I also think that the pool ADA reg improvements are going to be very, very important, because with those, we got to be sure to keep those pools open, and we need to stay up on that, make sure everything's safe and ADA has access to it and all. And then the Chase Palm Park renovation, I think that's really important, because there's a lot of aspects on that renovation that applies to a lot of different people and a lot of different uses of the park. The Carrillo gym wall, I think if we don't get on that as soon as possible, we're going to end up with more damage there, and it's just going to cost more later on. So I think that's probably a good idea to get busy on that within the next couple of years. And our park restrooms, I mean, that's where everybody goes into, our tourists, our local people. I think that's very, very important to make sure those restrooms are up to snuff, working well, and people feel comfortable in them. That's important. And of course, the park infrastructure safety program. We have to make sure that we have good and adequate benches and equipment that folks can use, and that it's going to be safe. So I pretty much think that, you know, the city should put its priorities on making sure that everything we have is really working well, and that you know, we just keep that in mind as we move forward. So, and then everything here that we have for the next 2 years is important. And if we get the best bang for our money as we can, if we can do as many projects as possible, I think that would be great with the funds we have. Instead of spending a whole lot on just one project, let's try to get as many worked on and taken care of as possible with the dollars we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Farrar. Mr. Casebeer?
Thank you. I would just like to make a pitch for Kids World, being probably for young families one of the most highly used sites in our whole scope of things. And it's something that, well, Mr. Farrar used the word bang for our buck. As far as serving our citizens, Kids World, you can't go wrong.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to second that. Oh, sorry. I thought you saw me.
Ms. Alley?
My comments are, I applaud you and the staff for putting this together. It's quite an extensive list, and you can't take advantage of opportunities unless you're prepared, and it's clear that the staff has prepared a wealth of information here. So thank you so much for the presentation, all the information. I share the ideas that safety, ADA requirements would be a priority, in my opinion, so that we can provide accessibility for all. Safety issues, be it lighting or other needs that are found to be lacking currently, but could be improved by, again, like lighting or whatever safety issue improvements could be made, would also be a priority, in my opinion. And I really appreciate the Neighborhood Advisory Committee's recommendations, because Santa Barbara is full of different neighborhoods, and some people don't have the opportunity to go outside of their neighborhood. And so tending to the pocket parks or the playgrounds within the neighborhoods or the neighborhood community centers would be a priority for me as well, because I think that people are really attached to their neighborhoods, and going across town might not seem like a big deal for some of us, but it seems like a big deal for others. And I think that paying attention to those Neighborhood Advisory Committee groups' recommendations is an important priority as well.
Thank you. Okay, I have a couple comments, and they go along with what all of you have said. And I'm going to take a stab, because our job here is to prioritize the projects, the proposed projects for the CIP list for FY 2014 and FY 2015. So, to me, the first issue, and Ms. Alley said this, is safety. I think that's what we need to look at. Given that, I would put the playground replacement program in the #1 position at the top of a list. And I'd like your comments on this, because this is just kind of my thoughts, and we can change these around. We've done a lot of talk here about deferred maintenance, and we have a lot of deferred maintenance because we've had so many budget cuts. So I think that we need to keep that in focus too when we're prioritizing things, so that we start to take care of some of these things that have been pushed aside in bad financial times or difficult financial times. I would probably put number 2 as the park restroom renovation program. I agree with Mr. Ferrara that you know, everyone visits the restrooms. So I think that's top to keep them, you know, up to date. I would put as number 3, now these are the projects that Ms. Zachary has listed for the 2013-2014 year. So number 3, I would put the pool ADA regulatory improvements. I think that's key. We need to have our ADA access up to date, and it will also help cut down on the maintenance, because from what I read at Los Baños, it's a daily thing that has to occur in maintenance to deal with the lift. So I hate to put it as number 4 because I'd love to put it as number 1, but safety is first. But I think number 4 definitely is Cabrillo ball field renovation. Ms. Ali said it. You've got to be ready. You've got to take those opportunities, because I mean, you've got to be ready for those opportunities when they come. And since this is a smaller amount of money to basically deal with design and some early stages of the planning for Cabrillo ball fields, I think that's really important. This project would be neighborhood improvement in a neighborhood that is really, really, really struggling with that, and it would be just a huge huge uptick for them if we started to work on some improvements to the Cabrillo ball fields, and I think it goes a long way towards safety. So because I think improvements that are made there are going to make the neighborhood safer, the area safer. I'm not sure where I put the Shoreline Park Safety Improvement Project. Is that just the continuation of I'm struggling with that because I don't think it's really safety anymore, is it, Ms. Zachary?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, it's identified for FY14 because we had additional fencing improvements we wanted to make, improvements to the sidewalk that we wanted to make. We also have beautiful signs that are going to get installed fairly soon from Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, and the whale tail, if you've looked at it lately, is becoming more and more challenged, and we think we're going to need to replace it. So that amount of funding is really things that we really wanted to get done, but we couldn't because we got to the end of our funding. So it's really what more could we just do to take us to that last final step at Shoreline Park and finish those things. That's that aspect of the project.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I guess I'd put that as number 5 then, to finish that up, because it would be nice to complete that. Number 6, I would put the Park Infrastructure Safety Program. Again, that's deferred maintenance safety. We want to make sure our equipment is in good working order. Number 7, I'd put Ortega Pocket Park, and I would hope that maybe that came to the forefront in another way, because that was RDA and has now been turned over to the city. But again, it's a neighborhood that could really use a park, and it's neighborhood improvement. And again, I think it maybe makes the neighborhood safer too. So I think that would be a real enhancement to that area. Number 8, I put the park irrigation renovation system, and again, it's deferred maintenance. It's things that we need to start getting done. Number 9, I put Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse maintenance. If that project garners some community support and maybe it's a chicken and egg thing, maybe it has to be up the list further to garner that community support, but I had it as number 9, and number 10 I had, excuse me, the Parks and Recreation Facility Sign Replacement Program. So that was kind of my prioritized list. And then I have one for the next set of years, but let's just for FY 2015. So, but let's just talk about this. Does anyone have comments on? Yes, Mr. Casebeer.
I'd like to encourage us to think about moving or emphasizing the importance of the Cabrillo Pavilion. It's kind of, now wait, is this a sexist comment? Weak sister? Like, it just doesn't have the importance or the, but yet, I was recently in especially the downstairs, the upstairs is relatively good, but I went into the men's bathroom and it's not a pretty picture. The dressing rooms, the locker rooms are hideous. It's an opportunity that we are missing, and we can just keep on putting it off down the road. But as Ms. Zachary has said, you know, no guts, no glory, you know, and not that these other things aren't important, but yet I say that Cabrillo Pavilion can be one of our crown jewels. And right now it's in sad, sad shape. And it's only, we're just throwing Band-Aids at it. You know, every year we do, well, actually the men's bathroom was renovated in the last year or two, but it's not very nice. So I just put that for your consideration.
Well, where would you, let's talk about this, because I don't disagree with you at all. And after Ms. Zachary's presentation about the fact that a lot, the bulk of, well, the business plan and you know, there's been some schematics developed. I think those are really encouraging steps. I was looking at it as a huge chunk of money, but where would you put it, Chris? Would you put it
like third or fourth?
Okay.
After safety.
So if would you put it ahead of Cabrillo ball field renovation?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move it up. Let's move it from 9 to 4, and we'll put Cabrillo ball field at 5, and then move everything down the list from there.
Where was
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, I think I'd like to try and make this easier for you, because the reality is there's not going to be the money to do those things. So while I appreciate comments from the Commission that will go forward to Council about the importance of these projects, the Cabrillo Pavilion and bathhouse renovation is likely only going to be accomplished through some kind of bond funding. And that's just the reality, because we're not talking about $950,000 and $2 million. We're talking about what the out years are, and I think it was a total of $8 million. So the reality is, in all likelihood, general fund capital for all of the general fund departments will total probably between 1.5 million and 2 million for each year. It could be at least for 14, at least for 14, 15, because part of that is the new policy that Council adopted about year-end monies, and half of it goes to rebuild the reserves and half of it goes into a capital sinking fund. So what I would suggest is that you maybe, you know, give us a little bit more in terms of larger groupings, in terms of the project. What I heard was safety. And so the projects that you feel are safety and of those that you would prioritize. And so I think what you're really doing is you're giving us the information, because what will go to council as a recommendation is only determined once we know how much general fund money we will have to play with, and then that takes into consideration all of the other demands for the other general fund departments. So I just don't want you to spend a lot of time on something that is really maybe in the end not as productive. So if you can maybe group, all agree that, within the safety projects, if those are your higher priorities, which are the ones that you think are the highest priority. So, and maybe Jill might have some additional suggestions.
And I think the other thing to think about is we've given you a big list, in part because many projects and programs need to be public discussion on the radar, so to speak, so that even if there's not a direct allocation of funding for XYZ project, it's, we've been talking about it. And so then it creates potentially a future opportunity. And or it creates there's a coalescing around a certain project. For example, it might be Cabrillo Ball Field. There could be enough input from all over that it's that project, or enough input that it's focused on neighborhood improvement projects, whether it's pocket parks or improvements to neighborhood centers. And then we go, okay, we've got 4 projects. Okay, I don't know if that helps. So part of us is putting it up there and going, we think we can keep working on these. It's not like it's some conceptual idea that we just haven't started work on. And to have from the commission your general sense of, this is the approach we would want to take in terms of prioritizing the types of projects, whether they're safety or park use or whatever it might be. And not forget the critical importance of the bathhouse and the pavilion renovation, and advocate on that behalf too.
Well, I think we probably all, I would assume we all agree that safety is the #1 priority. Ms. Alley?
And just as a matter of discussion, as I think about it even more, yes, safety and ADA regulations rise to the top for me, but I'm thinking that perhaps it would be a good idea to sprinkle in some of those improvements that will be saving money, be it putting in LED lighting over Cobra lighting, having water or the Cobra head lighting, or water savings. So sort of coming back to those projects that might have some sort of return on investment, so that we can start saving money in energy and water usage, and then sort of forward some of those savings onto other projects that may not have those return on investments but are very important.
Right, and we also have our deferred maintenance, where we've
So
where
what can we
play.
all agree on? Why don't we start trying to get this?
Well, I originally, when I kind of did my prioritized list, first of all, the playground replacement program, I think that's definitely safety. That would be the pool ADA regulatory improvements. I think that's safety. Would I actually put Cabrillo ball field renovation as neighborhood improvement and safety? Maybe. No. Okay.
Park infrastructure?
Yeah, is that you call that a safety program, Ms. Zachary? So I know that's, trash cans, benches, barbecue grills. Would you put that as a safety program? Yeah. Okay. So that's 3 that we've identified.
Park restrooms.
And park restroom renovation. I would, yeah. I think that's maintenance and safety. That's yeah, that's a different year. Let's just do the first year first, okay? Just the FY 2014. So those are the. Would everyone agree with that? The playground replacement, the park restroom renovation, the pool ADA regulatory improvements, and the park infrastructure safety program.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So safety's number one, and then, I do think that the commission needs to make a comment about the continued deferred maintenance that is in our parks, and some of these programs relate to that, and or projects relate to that, and we would hope that City Council would consider the amount of maintenance that's been deferred during these difficult budget times, and hopefully we might be able to start to catch up on that. And that would involve things like, the park irrigation renovation system, the sign replacement, that's deferred maintenance. There's quite a few. There's quite a few that we've already discussed that also are involved in safety. So would everyone agree with that?
Where would you put the Shoreline Park Safety Improvement Project?
I would probably put it up there with safety, since it involves fencing. Yeah. Yeah.
I
it's
would
just
think
fun.
that, as Ms. Ellie was saying, get something fixed before it gets worse. And the Carrillo Gym wall spalling, that could, if
Yeah,
that's
that's
not
the
repaired.
that's the next year.
Is that next
Yeah.
year?
Yeah, that's in, yeah. So
You're
let's,
right.
so
Okay.
can we all agree on this, and then we can move to, does that give you enough to go on for FY 2014?
Commissioner, Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, yes. And I think what we would do is we'll group it under your sort of key areas. So you have safety, deferred maintenance. I also heard neighborhood enhancement or.
Yeah, I had neighborhood improvement / safety, because I think there's a couple projects that are, I think Cabrillo Ball Field and also Ortega Paca Park could also improve safety in the neighborhoods as well as enhance the neighborhoods.
Well, the lighting at the Cabrillo Ball Field would
Right.
do that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if that gives you enough to go on, going to FY 2015, there were 13 projects proposed. We should make a comment for FY 2014 about, I think, for the golf course, from the Golf Fund, there's proposed the proposed repair of the roofs. I mean, I think that's pretty essential, considering that they leak. And the Measure B, the Andre Clark Bird Refuge, that's an ongoing multi-year effort anyway, so I think which we would support. Okay, so for FY 2015, if we are all agree that safety is number one, we're back to the playground replacement program. And I think, Mr. Casepier, this is where the double whammy of deferred maintenance and safety comes in for Kids World. So I think that's another top priority that we could all agree on there. So we've got the playground replacement program, we've got the Kids World renovation, we have the park restroom renovation program. Again, we have pool ADA regulatory improvements. So I think those are 4. And again, we have Cabrillo. Well, that would be lumped under neighborhood improvement and safety. The Cabrillo ball field.
Cabrillo Ball Field is up and running. You know, there are lights, there are facilities there, but, you know, we kind of glossed over the Ortega Pocket Park, you know, and here's a community that's underserved by Parks and Rec, where we could really make an impact. And so I would de-emphasize the ball field renovation and support Ortega Pocket Park.
What are the closest parks to Ortega Park? I mean, how far do the folks have to go from
Waterfront.
there? And had a question too. It says Ortega Pocket Park / Mission Creek Flood Control Park Development. So how does that part fit into it? The Mission Creek.
That's part of the. Oh, I should let Ms. Zachary answer that.
Chair Wiscombe, that's fine. That's the other name by which this site is referred to. Okay. So we call it the Ortega Pocket Park because that's just our way we refer to it, but it's listed as an enforceable obligation under the RDA as the Mission Creek Flood Control Park Development. So we want you to understand and be clear that this was a project that is considered an enforceable obligation, and therefore there's a greater chance that it'll actually get funded through the dissolution process of RDA. If it doesn't for some reason, we still want it in our capital program because it's still a site that we think needs to be developed.
So we want to keep some.
So we want to
shed
say
light
yes,
on it.
that's important if that's what you'd like to do.
I don't agree that I don't think we need to actually put it as a ranking. I don't agree that it is. I think the location of Cabrillo ball fields, and we've all sat here, or most of us have on the commission when we've had people from the neighborhood come in and speak to us about some pretty exciting things that they'd like to see happen there. There's a lot of spark and energy for making additional improvements there, adding amenities, and I feel that that's a neighborhood that has had some problems, continues to have some problems, and that it would be a really good thing. It's also the location of the Chromatic Gate, which is getting a major facelift, and I think that to continue to work on Cabrillo Ball Field renovation, with that in mind, that the Chromatic Gate's going to get redone, and it could just become a whole new uplifted area. So those are my comments, but I don't think we need to actually rank one above the other. So, but if we could move on to FY 2015, I think we were on to safety there, and we were doing the playground replacement program, Kids World renovation, the park restroom renovation program, and the pool ADA regulatory requirements or improvements as 4 things that relate to the number 1 goal of safety in our parks.
I'd like to call attention to the irrigation in our parks. We're not doing anything in 2014, and we can't go 3 years without investing in these they need continual help and maintenance, and we're overlooking either you pay for it, keep it up, or it's going to cost us a lot more money down the road.
Well, I think, okay, I agree with that, and I think I had that under deferred maintenance, as I did the Parks and Recreation parking lot maintenance, which is also, another area where.
I would put the parking lots way below the irrigation.
Okay, that's,
Let's include both of them, though.
yeah. Well, okay, would you like to rank them, Mr. Casebeer?
Prioritize the irrigation repairs and upgrades over the parking lot maintenance program
Okay.
substantially.
Okay. So where do we all put the Chase Palm Park renovation? We have some other things on this list that we do not have in FY 2014. We have the Carrillo Ballroom air conditioning and the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan.
Low priority.
What's low priority?
Air conditioning in Cabrillo.
I would probably
Pavilion.
agree with that. Does anyone else? Yeah. How about the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, going back to the Cabrillo Rec Center, the Carrillo Rec Center. Again, I'm sort of thinking back to it being a revenue builder, and if people are more inclined to participate in events that are there, and we have greater revenue, that might help forward funds for other projects.
Okay. That's a good comment. Yeah. I think, and I think there was some, I think Ms. Rapp made a comment that may improve revenue. Revenue's been pretty good there since
But to
the renovations.
substantiate $215,000.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, Mr. Casebeer. Yeah. Okay. And how about the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan? Does anyone have any comments on that? My feeling is I would love to see it happen. But it's kind of like the Urban Forest Management Plan that maybe could get kicked down the road if need be, and done at a later date. So I probably wouldn't give that a high priority. I would to repair work like the Carrillo gym wall spalling. Things that after anything that involves safety, I think is important. And the park infrastructure safety program, I didn't actually mention that, but I think that's important. Again, the Cabrillo ball field renovation, if we could take it to the first step in FY 2014, I'd love to carry it on in 2015, but I think that depends what happens in FY 2014 with the project. So,
Chair Wiscombe?
Yes.
If I could maybe, for the commission's benefit, just group all the projects. Don't necessarily worry about whether it's in 14 or 15. It's just a planning tool. It's really, if you have these projects in front of you, if I understand, you sort of have 4 categories. You have safety, deferred maintenance, neighborhood improvement, and safety, and then you have low priority. So maybe they don't fall into any one of those other ones, or we don't know what to do with these category, which, the bathhouse is you could be on any sides of the fence on that project. However, it doesn't really fit neatly, perhaps, in your prioritization in looking at things in the short term. So maybe think about it that way, and then think, but in the long term, don't forget, we have this major recreational facility that really needs attention and a facelift. We're being realistic and realizing that there's not $1 million in the general fund to pay for all the plans and permits, kind of thing.
So maybe that's a good way to put forth our recommendations instead of going over again and again which one where it's above the other one, is to do it that way with deferred maintenance, with safety, send it to the council, deferred maintenance, and you guys can put together the list there and take it in that way.
I would agree, and I think generally the things that are listed as safety items, those are always our top priority no matter what the year is. So this has actually been, even though you may not feel like you've accomplished anything. I think it has been helpful. I actually made a note, and I think it was Commissioner Alley, but I could have been wrong, about the Carrillo Recreation Center air conditioning unit, and I made a note that, you know, I'm going to have staff look at a funding plan from revenue that potentially we could propose that the city fronts the cost and that we'll repay that with revenue from the Carrillo Recreation Ballroom over a number of years. So that was a good idea that I had not gotten to before, but we'll explore that. And I think we have a sense of your priorities. Do you feel that we have what we need, Jill? Do you want more clarity on some of those other projects, or are we good?
I guess I would ask the commission, under your neighborhood improvement enhancement sort of category, I hear Ortega Paca Park, Cabrillo Ball Field. Nothing so much about Chase Palm Park renovation.
Oh, I think that should be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there something else that's missing?
I'm also sort of supporting the East Side neighborhood lighting plans, the curb and gutter on Euclid Street, and the West Side lighting as well. Being a resident of one of those particular areas, it's dark, and that's dangerous, and it doesn't feel safe from a potential to, meet up with a car, or I know it's hard for pedestrians to be seen by people pulling out. It's just dark, and so I think that that's a safety concern in those various neighborhoods. And of course, meeting up sidewalks I think would be important, and the access ramps that are mentioned.
If I could just ask a question, Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Alley, you're referring to the handout tonight, which showed
The 14 to 19.
recommended funding. Is that correct?
I'm looking at a combination of, yes, of all of the materials, but yes, it's listed as the sidewalk fill-in and the street lights on the east side and west side neighborhoods.
So those are ones that are currently proposed in the capital program
All
for
right.
potential funding. So I guess
Brilliant.
my question is, are you concurring with the list as it's shown here? Because that makes it easy, or are you suggesting the commission agree with these priorities?
I agree with the priorities.
Which, the ones on the...
The neighborhood improvement task force, and perhaps I'm looking at this incorrectly, but
The list of projects that was on the handout, the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force, these were, we provided this to you, and then the Neighborhood Advisory Council reviewed those proposed projects and came up with the recommendations for these priorities, which is the access ramps, the Franklin Center improvements, the neighborhood enhancement program, the Lower West Side and West Side lighting plan, the pedestrian bridge over Sycamore Creek along Montecito Street, bus shelters, and then neighborhood community park enhancements. So there were two different places where the projects were addressed.
okay,
Right, this is what they did at their last meeting.
got it, okay.
Yeah. And there's the-
So, but those aren't in the CIP.
They're in the CIP under the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force, and they're important for the commission to consider because they relate in many cases to our park and recreation facilities. No, you
One's
were
for
given a handout, the last page of your staff report. No, in this,
In the final pages of the report that we were, in the packet that we were given, and additionally.
the CIP has sections for every department and program. So the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force is not part of the Parks and Recreation Department. However, there are projects proposed under that program that improve or relate to our facilities. And so we give them to you so you can see sort of the breadth of what the city might be working on. The access ramps and all that other stuff aren't necessarily related to Parks and Recreation, but they're part of NIT, that program. So we want you to know that those are neighborhood priorities that have been identified. And certainly the commission can comment on those neighborhood priorities.
And I suppose that's what I'm doing is I'm acknowledging and appreciating the information as it is presented from the Neighborhood Advisory Committee and voicing my opinion to make those a priority.
Okay. Okay. So Ms. Zachary, you're clear on what we consider important for safety. Is that correct? And are you clear on what we consider important for neighborhood enhancement / safety or neighborhood improvement, which would be Cabrillo, Ballfield, Ortega Pocket Park, I think that's all I have there. And are you clear on deferred maintenance categories?
For deferred maintenance, I have irrigation, I'm just going to shorten the names, signs, the sign thing, project, parking lot maintenance, and Creo gym wall spalling.
Okay. So where do we put Chase Palm Park renovation? Where would that would probably go?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Chase Palm Park renovation. That's $50,000 in FY15. So I would probably put that under deferred maintenance / enhancement or deferred maintenance or something, because it is something that needs to be upgraded, because isn't that correct? Yeah. So okay. And Shoreline Park Safety Improvement Project, you have that under safety. Kids World, we have that under safety. Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse Maintenance, although it's probably not, it's a moot point. I had that under both deferred maintenance and enhancement, but because that's, playground replacement is safety. Signs are deferred maintenance. We know all that. Okay, and then the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan would be kind of down the list. You kind of as other, not prioritized at this point. Yeah. So, okay. So does that give you enough to go on?
Yes, Chair Oscom and Commissioners, I think we've actually gotten quite a lot of feedback from you. And part of our job is to take that feedback and communicate it to others. So I definitely appreciate you wrestling through our needs and priorities.
I have a question. Would you be able to send us an email with those completed lists when you get it all put together so we can take a look at it?
I think what we'd like to do, because this is an evolving process, when we bring the recommended budget back to you, I think we'll go into a little bit more depth. We'll kind of revisit what we had talked about and then what is actually being proposed. We will also have a better sense of exactly, what the likelihood is of future funding. So we'll do that. We'll do that as part of the budget.
Great.
Okay, thank you both very much. That was, I know that's a lot of work. Probably nothing that you look forward to every year, but it's a great document, working document. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.